Alright, so this woman is called Miss Snake, or Omi-san. A couple of months back, she basically blew up the internet, like, no matter where I scrolled, she was there. Her fan art was everywhere, even from people who don't play FGO. And honestly, with a design like that, I totally get why everyone was instantly hooked. I was one of those people who got bombarded by Miss Snake fan art, and at first, I didn't even know she was from FGO. I thought she was a character from some other game. Well, that only lasted like a day, but the more she kept popping up in my feed, the more curious I got. So I looked her up and turns out she's just an NPC from the My Little Dragon event. Since that event's still JP only and hasn't dropped on NA yet, I don't know all the story details. But from what I found, she doesn't play a huge role in the plot. She's just one of the servants summoned for the Holy Grail War. Now, here's the part I do know. She's based on an animal bride folktale, kinda like Miss Crane. Basically, one night a man gets a surprise visit from a beautiful woman who asks to stay at his house. They get married, have a kid, but when it's time for her to give birth, she tells him not to peek. And, like in most folktales, of course he peeks and sees her true form, a snake. Since he broke the rule, she had to leave. She couldn't nurture her child, so she gave up her own eyes to feed him instead. Now that's an interesting tale, I gotta admit. But let's be real. You guys probably liked her the second you saw her design, not even because of her story. Don't even try to deny it. Well, at least most of you. And honestly, same. Who doesn't like this kind of mommy-type character? Plus, her outfit is basically the virgin killer type. No wonder people are begging for her to get a playable version. This situation actually reminds me a lot of Artoria Lancer Alter, you know, the kind of character who doesn't get a huge role in the story, but because her design is just that good, people keep holding on and making endless fan art. Well, except for the fact that she's already a playable character. And that's what I want to talk about today. See, NPCs in FGO are usually just passing guests, characters who show up for one event or one story chapter and then disappear. But sometimes, certain NPCs, even if they're locked to just one event, end up having a huge impact on us, the players. Well, Miss Snake is one of the examples. Even though Bricioni and Kurohime were supposed to be the highlights of that event, Miss Snake is the one who really blew up with the fandom. And honestly, it's not just about design. Sometimes it's a character's attitude or actions that make them stand out. Well, I've already talked too much about something you guys probably already know, so let's move on to another NPC who became super beloved by the community and honestly deserves to be playable. If a lot of fans loved Miss Snake because of her design, this one I'm 100% sure we love because he's just the best. Yes, you and me too. Pretty sure you'd like him. In Russia, we meet Patsy, a half-human, half-demonic beast who pretty much looks like a werewolf. He joins us on our mission to take down the Lost Belt and beat the shit out of Kadok. And let me tell you, people love Patsy. Sure, as an NPC, we know he'll only have a limited role in that chapter. But even so, Patsy's character really hits different, not just for Fujimaru, but for us players too. You could say he's got a body of steel, mind of iron, and a heart of gold, or maybe more like a body of fur. Now the love for Patsy probably comes down to a few things. Most of the time, non-player characters are just there to drop some info or give us context. Sure, they show up in the story, but not in a super deep way. Patsy though, he's actually involved in the story. And honestly, the way Lost Belt 1 is written really works in his favor. A big part of the story is told from his perspective, so he kind of becomes an extra audience surrogate for us. Since he's not part of the rebel army at the start and has just been surviving on the Russian frontier his whole life, we really get to see the world through his eyes. Another thing that makes Patsy's existence so interesting is how, in this completely foreign world, he's the one actually questioning things. He doesn't just accept the rules of the Lost Belt. In fact, he's probably the only Yaga who doesn't buy into the idea that only the strong deserve to exist. And that's a pretty big deal. Even though he's a creature of that Lost Belt, he doesn't let it define what he believes in. Then there's that moment I think really sealed the deal for fans to fall in love with this dog bro. See, he's one of the few people who actually gives Fujimaru the moral boost to keep moving forward. At the start of the Lost Belt, Fujimaru is the one carrying everything, pushing forward, ready to take on the impossible, while Patsy's just scraping by, doing the bare minimum to survive, getting dragged along anyway. But by the end, it's Patsy who pulls Fujimaru out of their slump and pushes them to keep fighting. Honestly, that's probably one of the biggest reasons why we all ended up loving Patsy. There's just something super relatable about him. He connects with us not only through his loyalty, but also through the reality of his situation in Russia. You can feel what he's feeling. He knows how harsh his world is, how overwhelming the power at the top can be. And even with all that weighing on him, he still finds the will to try and change things. And yeah, a lot of people hope Patsy can come back in the story. And let's be honest, he totally deserves a spot as a playable character. We know his world already collapsed, but it's still possible for him to return. As long as Nasu's the one writing it, it's possible. Many fans even imagine him coming back as an archer. So yeah, let's just hope he shows up again, at least as something to remember. Now, talking about someone that should already be playable, of course we've got to mention this one, Lavinia Waitley from the Salem Singularity. Let me tell you, this kid deserves way more. And honestly, masters everywhere have shown her a ton of love. In the Salem storyline, she's this mysterious girl around the same age as Abby. And if you didn't know, Lavinia Waitley is actually a character from H.P. Lovecraft's works. But I'm guessing you probably already knew that. What's really charming about Lavinia is her unique and oddly cute design. Leave it to Japan to take a character with such a dark origin and turn her into something surprisingly adorable. In Lovecraft's The Dunwich Horror, Lavinia was about 35 at the start, lived a rough life, and wasn't exactly described as pretty. In fact, she was meant to look somewhat scary and deformed. But in FGO, she's reimagined as a young girl around Abby's age, with ghostly pale skin, white hair, and mesmerizingly eerie eyes that go beyond simple albinism. She even has a horn on her head that changes length depending on the scene, and her smile is slightly crooked, even when she's genuinely happy. Despite the creepiness factor, she still manages to come across as cute and endearing. Her quirks make her design all the more memorable. And with her sympathetic backstory in Salem, all the unusual parts of her appearance become charm points that fans can't help but love. Now sure, everybody likes cute things, but for me personally, the moment that really made me like Lavinia, aside from her design, comes down to two things. First, how she absolutely wiped the floor with Hopkins. Yes, this girl can fight. You have no idea how happy I was when I read the part where she got angry at Matthew Hopkins, someone who, for me, is on the same level of annoying as Shinji, and then proceeded to beat him down. Hopkins finds out the hard way that underestimating her was a mistake. He thought a couple of soldiers would be enough to deal with a quiet, timid girl like her, but Lavinia took him out in seconds with nothing but a silver ritual knife. All because he was dumb enough to kill her family and threaten Abigail. That's the first reason. The second is obviously her friendship with Abby. You know, I can't let anyone in my family know that I'm literally kicking my feet whenever these two start acting all buddy-buddy. It's just that sweet. Especially because Lavinia tends to not openly admit how much she cares, which somehow makes it even cuter. This power of friendship grows so strong that Lavinia actually manages to change the fate that was set for her. Even in Abby's interlude, Lavinia is so important to Abigail that her longing to see her again literally creates a dream version of Lavinia. Sure, this dream version knows she isn't the real one, but she still stays by Abby's side, watching over her as a friend. So yeah, with those two, plus her design, she is widely loved by the community. But honestly, I still can't wrap my head around why Lavinia isn't a playable character yet. She's got everything. Lore, design, popularity. She even already has a high-quality figure on the market, which just proves how much people want more Lavinia content. I guess with Ordeal Call happening, we'll see how the whole Foreigner class storyline concludes, and hopefully a certain someone with a contract to a foreign being can finally join us once again. Now, after Lavinia, there's another character who I think has the same kind of charm. And this one is still pretty fresh if we're talking about the NA server. Well, not exactly new, but still not that long ago. Camazotz. You see, Camazotz was an instant hit with the fanbase when Lost Belt 7 Part 1 was released. And what's crazy is that this guy barely shows up. Well, no, he does show up, but his actions were so powerful. And even then, he was just a minor antagonist. And you know what really makes Camazotz stand out? He's beloved for having an ostentatious design that's still faithful to main Katek imagery, especially compared to other NPCs who have more mundane and subdued designs. I'm not saying their modern outfits are bad or anything, but gods like Tezcatlipoca and Kukulkan in Part 1 wore more modern designs. Not bad though, I also think it somewhat fits the Lost Belt setting. It's just that the contrast with Camazotz is huge. On top of that, Camazotz has a deranged personality and hammy expressions to match. And after all that, you can't help but feel like this guy isn't truly evil, right? Or am I the only one who feels that? It's like he's crazy, but he needs help, and you just can't help but want more of him. His popularity grew even further when it was revealed that he could create altars out of servants, all of whom have also been positively received. I love that part about him, by the way. And because of that, we can deep dive more into what an altar really is and how it works. After Part 1, fans hoped he would play a bigger role in Part 2, and that he'd eventually become a playable servant. After all, when we fought him, it was only against the generic huge ghost he summons. And what makes us happy is that he did indeed play a bigger role in Part 2, revealing his huge influence in the Lost Belt's backstory, a role that earned him the undying respect of the fanbase. Like, for God's sake, he's actually the one who has been dealing with the biggest boss battle we've ever fought. It's insane. Not only that, he was revealed to be a beast of humanity with a fully unique non-ghost sprite. So yeah, it's basically a given that he'll become playable sooner or later. Honestly, I'd be more shocked if he doesn't show up as playable within the next 2 to 3 years in JP, especially since the FGO story is heading toward its conclusion. Oh, and also, he kind of accidentally became a fan art gossip topic because of his interactions with Nitocris. I swear, a lot of fans started shipping those two, and that just makes him an even more lovable character. So far, we've been talking about NPCs who can fight, which makes sense why people think they deserve to be playable. But there's one NPC who can't really fight, doesn't have a legend about battles, yet fans love her so much that they really want her to come back as a playable character, and that's Siduri, Gilgamesh's assistant. In both the Babylonia Singularity and the original myth, Siduri was well liked for being kind, polite, and basically the opposite of Gilgamesh's personality. Her behavior alone was already lovely. She always tried her best to help. And you guys know how she basically took care of Gil and kept his arrogance in check, even after he became a king who could already be considered pretty wise. I mean, if you've seen the anime, there's that moment when Gil wakes up in the underworld, and the first person he looks for is Siduri, glancing around left and right. I swear someone even made a meme about it because he actually looks like a lost kid for a second. It's kinda sweet. But what really made fans fall in love with her was something much sadder, her tragic fate in that chapter. It's basically one of her highlight moments, and it was heartbreaking yet touching. She was kidnapped by these monstrous creatures called Lahmu and turned into one of them. Even after fully becoming a monster, she held onto her sense of self just long enough to make a heroic sacrifice to save Kingu, whom she mistook for Enkidu. And then she delivered one of the most iconic last speeches in the entire series, at least for me. I mean, come on, if you've played that chapter, it's impossible to forget lines like this. Or this one. Good lord, just remembering that moment still hurts. It broke so many players' hearts and made her one of the most loved and pitied NPC in the whole game. And then came what felt like a miracle from the devs. Later, during the Battle in New York 2019 event, Siduri got even more love. I guess they heard our prayer for Siduri and decided to give us a little taste of her outside her chapter. She appeared on her own craft essence, and she even replaced Queen of Sheba as the event shopkeeper. Now, the biggest surprise is that she actually had full voice lines this time. And since it was Yumi Uchiyama voicing her, of course fans were thrilled. People were so excited that Siduri's name even trended worldwide on Twitter in Japanese. I guess it was refreshing to finally hear her speak in a normal context outside of Babylonia's apocalyptic scenario, huh? Usually, after about 15 minutes, I wrap things up so I don't bore you guys. But this time, I just have to add one more. There's one guy fans have been dying to see become playable. He's a huge part of one of the most hyped arcs, one of the toughest enemies out there, and his power level easily stands alongside the Knights of the Round Table. Yep, I'm talking about the bold, sharp, and calculating Sir Agravain. This is the knight who wasn't afraid to manipulate Artoria herself, and his strength rivals any Round Table legend. I'm bringing him up because, while we already have a good chunk of Arthurian characters, including plenty of the Round Table Knights, the Shinsengumi squad from Japan is starting to take up a big chunk too. Just the other day, we got Kondo and a couple more Shinsengumi members, so honestly, I think Agravain's chances are looking pretty good. You see, Agravain is one of those characters masters have been begging to see in action. If anyone deserves the spotlight, it's him. He first made a huge impact in the Camelot Singularity with his fight against Lancelot, but since he didn't have a battle sprite or any in-game animations, all we got was a profile image and text. The whole fight played out in dialogue, and in the end, Agravain actually wins. It was a big moment in a story arc full of huge battles, and ever since then, fans have been wondering, why isn't Agravain playable yet? Back then, FGO was still a pretty new game, so it felt almost guaranteed he'd eventually be added. Years later, when the Camelot movie came out, hype went through the roof. We finally got to see the Lancelot versus Agravain fight fully animated, and it was amazing. The cinematography, the soundtrack, Agravain's sheer presence, it all hit hard. And then there's that moment where he just loses it and starts laughing like a madman after being taunted by Lancelot. Absolute chills. One of the coolest parts was seeing his commandment chains in action, using them to fight, to control his soldiers, everything. Watching it all, it felt like Agravain was basically already designed to be a servant. Just give him a sprite, ascension art, and a noble phantasm inspired by that fight, and he's good to go. So yeah, I think that's it for today. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't include any of the Gouda Gouda NPCs, well, honestly, I love all of them. Okay, some of them definitely deserve more attention, but for me, the ones I included in this video are my top priority. It's just my personal choice, so yeah, kinda subjective. At least I tried my best to explain the interesting reasons behind it. So for now, click subscribe, share, and like. I'll see you guys next time.